So now we're going to look at the different phases of puberty, right? So what is puberty? So puberty is a moment of a patient's life where they begin to have an outburst of hormones and they begin to develop their sex characteristics, right? So they can be categorized in 5 specific sections, 5 specific phases. The first phase we have, let's use this in white, is called the Adrene Arch. So every time you hear the word arch, this is referring to the phase. So Adrene Arch is the phase where you have your adrenal glands, specifically your adrenal cortex, right? So the outer layer of the cortex begin to secrete certain androgens, right? Certain kind of androgens that are generated in your inner cortex. This allows for the development of specific kinds of the beginnings of sex characteristics. So this is phase number 1. Phase number 2, okay, you have the Gonad Arch. So Gonad Arch. So what do you think this one's referring to? So we're looking at the Gonad Arch. So Gonad Arch is referring to the gonads secreting their specific sex hormones, right? So the gonads are the hormones that secrete the secondary sex hormones, right? So for example, the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, right? All these other kind of steroid hormones that are created during the gonad arch, right? And this is where we have, for example, in males, where the further testicles being able to develop and your ovaries in females beginning to develop, right? So this is the gonad arch phase. Third phase here, all right, it's called a thel arch. So thel arch. So this is where you have in the second phase, in the gonad arch, you have your primary sex characteristics, right? So your primary sex organs begin to develop. Now in number 3, you have your secondary sex characteristics. So in females, majority of their breast development happens in the thel arch, right? So the thel arch phase is responsible mainly for the actual development of the female breast development, okay? And then you have finally, after all this development, now you have these secondary sex characteristics become visible. You have the pube arch, right? Pube arch is where you have actual pubic region. So it is marked, the beginning of pube arch is marked by the beginning or the presence of the first pubic hairs, right? And so pube arch is where the puberty is basically showing you how all these hormones that are giving you your secondary sex characteristics versus, the pubic hair, the thickening of the voices, vocal cords, right? So the deeper voices in males, right? You have the pube arch. And then the final arch here, you have the menstrual arch. So the menstrual arch, right? Okay. Or it's called the menarche. So it's the menstrual arc, or the menarche phase here, is a final phase where you have instances of menstrual bleeding, right? So this is where there's a possibility of fertility that's taking place in the female body, right? So the menarche or menstrual arc, if this one's too confusing, then you can just put a little line over it like that. So menarche is the final step that they use, and that here is you have the possibility of fertility, so ovulation begins usually after the first menstrual bleeding during the phase of menarche.